is long. It seems to me there ain't no end in sight. Getting through it day to day, this just ain't no ordinary fight. And I've seen better days. I haven't lost my way. Where you gonna run to now? Where you gonna put all of your faith? Which path will you follow now? You didn't say all of them would be straight. And I've seen better days. And I haven't lost my way. Knowing I ain't finished yet, I know that there will be a better time. Just waiting for the sun to rise, wipe my tears and hold my hands up high. Oh, I've seen better days. Oh, I haven't lost my way. Oh, I've seen better days. Oh, I haven't lost my way. Oh, I will never lose my way. Oh, I will never lose my way. The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. My God will never fail. Oh, my God will never fail. gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see victory. I'm gonna see victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Yeah. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. Every war he wages, he will. No, I'm not backing down to any giant, 'cause I know how this story ends. Yes, I know how this story ends. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Oh, I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. With every breath, with every word I speak, with every step, with every heartbeat, Jesus, let it be for you only, my whole life, all for your glory. With every breath, with every word I speak, with every step, with every heartbeat, everything you are. All I need, all I need. I am forever in love with you. Forever in love with you. Everything, everything you are. All I need, all I need. I am forever in love with you. Forever in love with you. Everything, everything you are. All I need, all I need. I am forever in love with you. Forever in love with you. Everything, everything you are. All I need, all I need. I am forever in love with you. My life is in your hand. I trust it all. I trust it all to you. My dreams and all my plans. I trust it all. I trust it all. Forever unchanged, never be the same. 'Cause of your love, 'cause of your love. Forever unchanged, never be the same. 'Cause of your love, 'cause of you, Jesus. Whoa, whoa, whoa. 'Cause of you, Jesus. Whoa, whoa, whoa. 'Cause of you, Jesus. Whoa, whoa, whoa. 'Cause of you, Jesus. Whoa, Hear the voice of love that's calling. There's a chair that waits for you, and a friend who understands everything you're going through. But you keep standing at a distance, in the shadow of your shame. There's a light of hope that's shining. Won't you come and take your place? And bring it all to the table. There's nothing he ain't seen before. All your sin, all your sorrow and your sadness, there's a Savior and he calls. Bring it all to the table. You can see the weight you carry, the fears that hold your cross. You've been forgiven. You're accepted as you are. Bring it all to the table. There's nothing he ain't seen before. All your trials Bring it all to the table. There's nothing he ain't seen before. For all your sin, your sorrow, and your sadness, there's a Savior and it calls. Bring it all to the table.
What is up, New Vintage fam? It's July 12th as we kick off a brand new series called Buy the Book. Now, let me ask you this question. Are you a buy the book kind of person? Like when the instruction manual shows up, do you like to dive into it and use it? I'm not that guy. I'm not a buy the book person. My brother is an artist, very creative guy, and he threw the book out a long time ago. And I'm not talking about the Bible yet. I'm talking about the guidebook, the instruction manual, this is how you do it. This is the right way to do it. He threw that out a long time ago. He's not interested in that. And maybe you're a creative as well, and you're like, I don't want to do anything by the book. I want to do it my own way. I can tell you that when the IKEA furniture gets back to the house and I open the box, I see the book, but I'm not interested in the book at first. And I start to work on it, and I've done this many times where I put it all together and I kind of get to the end, there's missing pieces, and I look at it, I'm like, oh, it's upside down, it's backwards, where does this piece go? I'm not sure, and I've got to go reluctantly grab the book because I end up confused and frustrated and I don't know what to do, so I got to go to the book. I got to do it by the book. And I think that that's a little bit about kind of the way life and the Bible work. You know, it's like we have this weird thing where we don't want to ask for help. We don't want to be told how to do it. We don't want to follow the instruction manual. We don't want to, figure out what the Bible says about life, or we just don't want to be told how to do it. And so we go, I'm going to do life on my own. I'm going to figure it out myself. I'm not going to listen to that. My parents with the Bible, and my Sunday school teacher with the Bible, and that church down the street with the Bible, and my friend who's always sending me the Bible verses. I'm not going to do that for a while. I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to figure this out without the book. And then as time goes by, we end up maybe frustrated or confused or lost or feeling alone or unsure of ourselves. And maybe a friend doesn't seem that way. They've been living by the book, and we're like, well, reluctantly, I'll pick up the book and I'll read the Bible, or I'll listen to my friends who are talking about this God person where they're reading the Bible. And sometimes, somehow, some way, we end up opening up the book and going, okay, I'll see if I could do life by the book. But the truth is, the Bible is kind of under, scrutiny and subject to not being trusted right now by a lot of people. In fact, research says that 90% of people believe there is a higher power of some kind. 80% of people, this was research done by the Pew Research Company back in 2017, 80% of people said they believe in a God. Not just a higher power, but in a God of some kind. And 56% of people said they believe in the God as described in the Bible. So that means as a church, if you're listening from New Vintage, probably 56%, at least half of you, and probably more since you're attending church or watching church online, more of us listening today believe in the God of the Bible. So you believe that the Bible is the authority on what God is like. But it also means that 44% of Americans either don't believe in a God or believe that the God of the Bible isn't the God that we're talking about, isn't the God of reality. And so there's probably a percentage of you who are watching who are like, I'm not convinced that the Bible is how we get to know what God is like. And so you're maybe listening going, a series on the Bible, I don't know if I can trust it. I don't know if I can believe it. I don't know if I'm ready for it. And I get it. I totally get it. And so we're going to dive into this series called By the Book, and we're going to examine this idea of whether or not you can trust the Bible. See, I think this is important because not only in our church, but in our city. In our city, I bet there are a whole lot of people who believe that there's some kind of God, there's some kind of higher power, but they're not sure how to get to know that God. And I believe they want to get to know that God. And what if the Bible is the way that we can get to know that God? What if we as a church, maybe you as a person, what if I as a leader, what if we were able to explain to people how to get to know God through the Bible? See, if the reality is a lot of people don't think that the Bible is the way to do it. Years ago, Charles Spurgeon, a theologian, a Bible guy, said, defend the Bible? I'd sooner defend a lion. Like, I don't need to defend the Bible because the Bible can take care of itself. You know, in the same way that I don't need to defend a lion because we all know a lion can take care of itself. You know, he's saying a lion's more in danger than the authenticity of the Bible. But the truth is, things have changed since Spurgeon's time. And now the Bible is kind of under scrutiny and question. And so in modern times now, there are a lot of people going, I don't know if I can trust the Bible, which leaves us with a lot of questions. It leaves us with a lot of questions about, well, then how do I get to know God? And how do I find comfort from that being? And how do I discover what he's like? And can I get to know that God? Does he care about me? Is he a he? Is he a she? What's that God really like? And is this God distant? Are they involved? Is the God concerned about our daily needs or not concerned about our daily needs? Like what is this God really like? And if the Bible isn't the source, then that leaves us wondering, what is the source? Like, where do we find our information if it's not the book? And here's just a thought I have. See, this is a hunch. It's based off 20 years of doing ministry with people, many of whom abandoned their belief that the Bible was of any value. And I don't think that people really have a problem with the Bible. Some do. Some have read it, they've looked at it, and they don't agree with it. But many just don't want to follow it or live by it, not based on the Bible, but based on the people who presented the Bible to them. See, the Bible became weaponized. The Bible became a tool to shame them, to control them, to judge them, to take charge of them and make them do life a certain way. And they saw the way the Bible was being used, and they said, no, thank you. You're using that to control me. You're using that to shame me and to judge me and to hate me and to point out all my flaws and to make me feel guilty and sad about myself. So no, I'm not going to follow the Bible anymore. Thank you very much. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. That was nice when I was a kid, but now the way it's being used, I don't like it and I'm out. See, that's important because the reasons for people's rejection of the Bible don't have so much to do with the Bible oftentimes. They have to do with the way that people who taught them the Bible presented the Bible. And they said, no, I'm not interested in that any longer. But what if the Bible really is? What if the Bible really is the way to get to know God? What if it's not a weapon? What if it's not meant to shame you? What if it's not meant to control you or to fill you with guilt? And what if it was meant to direct your life in a way that took you to the best places that your life could go? That it was meant to give you a spirit of joy and to help direct your path into right ways of living that gave you a sense of value and worth and potential. What if the Bible really was a word from a loving God telling you how much he loves you, but you dismissed it, and I dismissed it, and we dismissed it because the way it was presented was so incorrect and so inaccurate and so difficult to accept. And that's why we're diving into this series called By the Book. I want you to know today I'm not even going to use a Bible verse because today I want to talk about why we can trust the Bible, and I'm not going to try and use the Bible to prove the Bible. That wouldn't make any sense. Well, listen to this verse from the Bible to convince you that the Bible. No, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't make any sense. I'm gonna avoid using a Bible verse this week. And I know some of you are like, what, a sermon with no verse? Who is this new pastor? I get it. But next week, I'm going to bombard you with some verses. So if you're starving for some Bible next week, I'm going to hit you with that then. But this week, we're not going to do that because I want to talk about why it is that we can trust the Bible. See, I think it is trustworthy. I think that you can trust the Bible and that there's good reason to trust the Bible. See, I'm a person who I have a hard time just believing it because somebody said so. I've never just taken something at face value and said, oh, well, you said it, so I'm going to just believe it. I'm a person who questions it and goes, yeah, but wait a second, but I'm not sure if, I don't know if that's true. Hold on, how do you know? Let me look at the evidence. Let me see what you're talking about. And one of my favorite series that Andy Stanley ever did when I was at North Point was a series years and years ago called Verdict. And it was basically this idea of putting the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, on trial like a courtroom. See, if the Bible's really true, we can't convince people or anybody beyond a shadow of a doubt. Like if the Bible's reliable, you're not going to know beyond a shadow of a doubt. Just like you don't know anything in history beyond a shadow of a doubt. I mean, even camera video footage can be doctored, and maybe, eyewitnesses could be lying, or, anything that's in a courtroom that people are on trial for, even though the goal isn't to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. The goal is to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And so you bring your evidence and you go, well, here's some video evidence. Here's some documentation. Here's some pictures. Here's an eyewitness. Here's some DNA evidence. Here's all this evidence that we're stacking up to say this is what really happened with this individual. Well, the same thing's true for the Bible. If the Bible really is authentic and reliable, it ought to stand up against a court case. It ought to be able to be tested. You ought to be able to bring things in and go, well, here's some evidence from this section, and here's some of this evidence, and here's this account, and here's this idea, and here's this thing compared to this thing, and this is the reason that we're getting closer to believing that we kind of know where it really came from and what it really is. And that's what I want to do. Is I want to for this week, I want to put the Bible on trial, and I just not really on trial because I'm gonna be the defense, I guess. I'm gonna be speaking on behalf of the Bible, saying, well, here's why I think it's trustworthy, and maybe you can be the prosecution. And you can say, well, I don't know about that because this and because of that, and what about this? And if that's what you would like to do, I'd love for you to DM me. See, I'd love for you to send me a message on Facebook or Instagram or just at darren@newvintage.org. Just hit me up with the reasons that you don't believe what I'm saying, you don't trust what I'm saying, you're not sure if you agree with it, and I really want to know what it is that's getting in the way of you trusting the Bible to be authentic and to be from God. And not in a way of like I want to get in a Twitter battle with you or want to get in an online war. Like I'm really genuinely curious. I want to know what it is that's standing in the way of you believing that you can trust what the Bible says. And if you do that, I'd love to dialogue with you, learn more about your story, and see what the courtroom would look like if it was you with your side and me with my side going, yeah, but what about this idea? What about that idea? And we had a genuine dialogue. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to present to you a little bit of evidence for why I think that the Bible can be trusted. And what I'm going to get to is this idea that if the Bible can be trusted, then we need to find out what it says. And really the idea here is you want to be able to come to the Bible with an open mind that says, okay, it's at least reasonable for me to think that maybe this book, which is the best-selling book of all time, that's actually a collection of 66 books written by over 40 authors on 3 different continents over thousands of years, this collection of books, it's not unreasonable for me to come to it and think maybe it is what it says it is. And next week we're going to talk about what it says it is. This week we're going to talk about the evidence. Next week we're going to talk about what the Bible claims about itself. The following week we're going to talk about what the Bible offers us. And then on the 4th week we're going to talk about, or we're going to have a little challenge, a little encouragement to dive into it together and see how we can help each other grow. And so here's where I want to start today. A guy by the name of Ravi Zacharias, who's a theologian and really an apologist, which means he defends the Christian faith. He passed away recently, which was a sad thing because he was one of the great defenders of truth and of the Bible. But Ravi Zacharias, he said, one of the things I always ask people when they say, why should I trust the Bible, is why not trust the Bible? Why wouldn't you trust the Bible? What's your reason for that? And so as you listen to this today, I really want you to ask yourself the question, do I trust the Bible to be authentic in what it says it is? Do I even know what it says it is? And if I don't, why don't I? Like, what's the reason I don't trust the Bible? Well, why is it that I don't rely on it? I'm not interested in it. I don't believe it's God's word. What's the reason that I don't trust it? I just want you to think about that, because the Bible claims a lot of stuff we're going to get to. But today we're going to talk about why I think it can be trusted. And we're going to look at it from the lens of history. Okay, we're going to look at it from the lens of history because that's how we basically treat all ancient literature. All the literature that we have that makes up our history books, we treat it through examining the text through a process called higher textual criticism. Okay, and so basically what that means is you find all the texts and all the old manuscripts and documents, you put them together, you look at them and you go, well, what do we have here? And how do they compare to each other? And does this older one match this newer one? And if they don't, that's a problem. But if they do, then we kind of know that they match. And so there's three basic tests, speaking broadly, there's three basic tests that scholars and historians use to check the authenticity of a particular historical manuscript, ancient manuscripts of all kinds. And so the first one is the bibliographic test, okay, the bibliographic test. And this just means that you take all your different manuscripts that you have and you compare them to each other to see if they line up. Now, we don't have any originals of the Bible. There's no original copies. We don't have like the first one ever written. It was written on papyrus and that degraded, and so they had to write it on another one and pass it on and pass it on. But we do have some really early copies, especially from the book of Mark and from the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and from Paul's writings and Luke, Acts. We have a lot of manuscripts from the early days. In fact, we have over 5,000 Greek documents of the New Testament, parts of the New Testament. And we put them all together and we line them up, and we have one from this part of the world and this part of the world and this part of the world. We put them all together and we go, well, this one from here lines up with this one from here and this one from here. And this one from this time period matches this one from this much later time period. And so we know that it didn't change over time. And so you go, well, what are the differences? Like, what are the big things? What are the things that really got us? And so Andy, in his message Verdict, was talking about when he was in seminary, they were doing higher textual criticism, and the professor gave them the hardest ones. And they said, okay, now I want you to look at this and see if you can figure out the big discrepancies. And it was like, well, in this one it said, of, and this one said for. It's like, well, that's the big difference. Yeah, there's not a big, those are the difficult ones. He was like, well, where's the one where it says, like, this one says he has 12 disciples and this one says he has 32 disciples? Like, where are those big, like, contradictions? And the professor said, well, there aren't any. This is like the hardest stuff we have. And so, see, when people have bought into this myth these days that there are all these crazy contradictions in the Bible, and there's all this stuff that just doesn't match up and just doesn't line up. And so when people bring that to you, if you have that conversation or if you have those comments, my question for you and your question ought to be, well, what specifically contradictions are you talking about? Which ones are you talking about, and why do you call them a contradiction? Because if you take the text and you compare it to other texts and other actual things that we found, you find that things didn't change. And honestly, this idea of figuring out the New Testament, it's one of the greatest, most vigorous academic exercises that has ever taken place. I mean, for hundreds of years, scholars, professors, scribes have taken these manuscripts and documents and studied them and placed them together and come up with what we now know was really written down by these guys. I mean, it's authentic. In fact, compared to what we have in other categories of ancient history with Plato or Aristotle or Sophocles or any of those ancient documents, we have far more evidence of the authenticity of the New Testament and the Bible than we have in any of those categories. I mean, think about it. The Roman empire lasted for 500 to 1500 years, depending on what part you're talking about. And yet we don't have as much on Roman history as we do. 1,500 years of Roman history. We don't have as much documentation of Roman history as we do about a carpenter from Jerusalem, from Israel, from Nazareth, who lived for 33 years. We have more on him than on any other part of history. Doesn't prove anything. It's just a piece of evidence I want to bring into the courtroom and go, what's up with this? Now, bibliographic is one way to look at it, and lots of scholars, in fact, even scholars from like Yale University and other places, they Princeton, they would go, you can't really argue with what we have, the text. I mean, it's incredible evidence, and I wish we had that kind of evidence for all of ancient history. We just don't. Now, the second test that historians use when looking at a piece of literature is the internal test. And this just means, can you prove, or can you not prove, can you kind of figure out that there were actually eyewitnesses still alive when this particular document was being written? Does it make sense that what's written would have been okayed? In other words, if Mark wrote this or Matthew wrote this while he was alive and eyewitnesses were alive, those eyewitnesses would have been able to say, that's not accurate. That's not what happened. You can't write that down. You can't copy that. You can't pass it on. That's a total lie. That's a fabrication. And so the internal test just looks at it and goes, okay, do we have eyewitnesses? And what we have for the Bible is not just a couple of eyewitnesses. We have multiple eyewitnesses. In fact, the authors, there are about 6 of them that people would say are eyewitness accounts, like literally eyewitness accounts, who are not claiming to have heard about something. They're claiming to have seen something and witnessed something. It's very different. They're not just saying, well, I heard that this guy Jesus died on a cross. They're saying, I saw it with my own eyes. That's the claim they're making, that I saw this with my own eyes. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Paul, and then Q, which we won't get into. But there's multiple authors of the New Testament, Peter even, who you would go, these people are claiming to be eyewitnesses. And if they're lying, there were other eyewitnesses still alive that would have said, nah, it's bogus. Again, does that prove anything beyond a shadow of a doubt? No, but it's a piece of evidence that I would bring to the courtroom and say, I mean, this makes sense. It lines up. And even if you would say, well, okay, I don't know if those eyewitnesses are lying or not, you still have to account for the fact that the early church exploded. Like something happened, and then the early church just blew up and spread out all over the place. This new idea, this new belief that there was a man named Jesus who died on a cross and rose from the dead exploded. And you could say, well, that's because they were just crazy. They were just insane. You got to come up with some reason why that happened other than Jesus if you want to disprove the Bible, if you want to disprove the Gospels. If you want to disprove the writings of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you have to explain away the early church. And so that would be what I'd say to you is, well, what's the evidence on the other side? What was the reason for this? Because we've got it documented. We know for certain that a church blew up. So what was that all about? And then finally, the last one is external test, the external test. So you've got bibliographic, internal, and external. And the external just means, is there anything outside of the book, this document, this literature, that would back up what the book says? And really we're talking about archaeological efforts. And time again, in fact, professors from Yale who are head of the archaeology department have said, the archaeological evidence that we discover in and around Jerusalem continues to support and uphold the things in the Bible that we read, the New Testaments, the Gospels that we read. There are multiple ideas of this. Luke writes in Acts, he uses words like proconsul that they didn't think there was nowhere else in Greek literature that it was there. So it was kind of like, well, I don't think this is legit because this guy's using a word that we don't find anywhere else. Until one time, an archaeologist discovered on a beam or a wall or an archway the word proconsul with the same name. I think it was like Gallio, the same guy that Paul references, or that Luke references, is on this archway or on this placard. And so they go, oh, okay, so what we just found backs up and supports that. I mean, you can look at the walls of Jericho as evidence, archaeological evidence. If we had more time, we can do that. By the way, if you're interested in it, we can dig through. You see what I did there? Archaeological evidence, and you find that it supports the Bible. Now, again, this doesn't prove anything beyond a shadow of a doubt, but it's just a piece of evidence that we bring to the courtroom to go, hey, I think this should at least be a reason for us to come to the Bible willing to read it for what it is and see what it says. And so the idea here, this idea of by the book in week 1 is to go, listen, I get it. It's old. But just because it's old doesn't mean it's wrong. I mean, there's lots of things that are new that are wrong. You know, something could be brand new but totally off base. Just because it's old doesn't mean it's wrong. Now, that's just another myth that people believe. I know it's old and antiquated. In fact, I had a guy here in Georgia come up to me in a coffee shop. I'm reading my Bible. He walks by. He goes, "You really believe that old thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." He's like, "Well, there's no reason to." And I thought, yes, there is. And that set me on a path to go, what's the reason that I believe this Bible? Because I've believed it since I was a kid. But why do I believe it? And I would come to you and go, the reason I believe it is because the evidence that we have, the bibliographic evidence, the manuscripts that we have, the documentation we have, the eyewitness accounts, the external archaeological evidence, the historical evidence points to giving the Bible credibility. If you don't give the Bible credibility, you have to throw out all of ancient history and say we can't trust anything in our history books. But we don't do that. And I think one of the reasons we throw out the Bible is because the people who presented the Bible to us didn't treat us very well, and they used it against us to try and control us. I also think that we have a problem with the supernatural because we've never experienced the supernatural, and this Bible talks about the supernatural. I don't know if I can believe it. We can talk about that later. What I want to get to today is this. If you believe that there's a higher power, that there is a God of some kind out there, then my guess is you want to know what that God is like. You would love to know what that God is like, but somebody has told you, read the Bible and figure out what God is like, and you just, I don't know if I can trust the Bible because those people who believe the Bible, they're just weird, or they make me feel guilty, or they just weaponize it. I don't want to read the Bible. I get it. But don't not read the Bible because of those people. Don't read the Bible if the evidence doesn't have any reason to point you to reading it. And I don't think that's the case. I think the evidence points to us going, okay, there's at least some good logic, some good reason to at least approach this book and see what it has to say. So that's my challenge. By the book. For the next few weeks, we're going to dive into the Bible together, see what it claims about itself, and then challenge one another to at least begin reading it, investigating it, learning it, so we know at least what it says about us and for us. My hope is that you'll tune in and check it out and dive in. Thanks for listening. Have a great week. Again, DM me, Facebook, Instagram, D. Youngstrom, or Darren at newvintage.org. I'd love to hear from you. Have a fantastic week.